me. I was not the first. No, I was the second.
Oh, okay. All right.
Put that correct.
All right, forget that.
He's got his purple jump on.
Yes, right. I used to work for Shell. I used to be their head of research. And Shell had a policy where they used to employ graduates. And graduates at Shell used to get very frustrated because there were lots of layers of people above them. They couldn't progress very fast. They often just used to leave. So anyway, the company in its infinite wisdom decided to have a different type of training scheme. They were going to have 10 graduates that were going to go from, in 10 years, we're going to go from graduate trainee to chairman of one of their companies, and they had a lot of companies around the world. So you had in 10 graduates who just thought they were really it. They thought, I mean, you couldn't tell them anything, they just thought they were it. They were told they were going to progress very, very fast, which was totally unheard of in Shell because it usually took about 25 years to get to that point. So anyway, as the market research manager, I was allocated one of these individuals. And one of these individuals, his name was Jimmy Carr. If you've heard of him, but this is absolutely true. He was allocated to my department. So it was my job for 2 years to manage him, ensure that he progressed, ensure that he learned things. He was a complete nightmare. So he'd turn up at like 10 o'clock in the morning, he'd go home at 4. I had to have a chat with him after he'd been doing the work for about 3 or 4 months, he'd been getting involved in market research, and I had a chat with him and he said, I think market research is absolutely crap. He said, you know, you do these most ridiculous things. You go into these places all over the country, you go and talk to these ridiculous people, you then have to come back sort of really late at night, then you're really knackered, and you have to go back into work the next day, and then if you're not doing that, you're presenting all these numbers that completely baffle people, and he just said, I just think this is just completely ridiculous. So anyway, there was one endearing feature about him in that he was able to sort of take the mickey out of Shell senior managers, and he was just brilliant at mimicking them, and he was absolutely hilarious. He was really, really funny. So he was quite amusing in a way. But anyway, we got to about 18 months through his 2-year period, and my boss came to me and said, you're going to have to do his review, and you're going to have to sort him out. He really is not progressing very, very well. So I did his review. We went to the park, we went to the local park, and I basically said, I read him the right acts. I said, you've got to get yourself sorted out. You've really got to, you've got to decide what you want to do. You've got to basically start putting yourself together. And the other problem was that the company decided right the way at that very early stage to abandon this 10-year policy. So he was completely demotivated at this point. About halfway through the review, he then turned to me and said, I'm going to leave Shell. I said, really? What are you going to do? He said, I'm going to become a comedian. So I said to him, don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. You know how many people would love to become a comedian? He said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to start the comedy club, and I'm going to become really famous. And I spent about 20-30 minutes trying to persuade him out of this. Anyway, it was completely futile because he decided what he was going to do, and the rest is history. So the lesson for me was I should never become a careers advisor.